The sun rose over the wide plains, casting a warm golden light across the dusty ranch. The rancher stepped out of his small wooden cabin and breathed in the fresh morning air. He had spent years working this land alone, tending to the cattle and keeping the fences in order. The days were long and the work was hard, but he found a certain comfort in the routine. Each morning began the same, with feeding the animals, checking the water troughs, and making sure the barn was secure. There were times when he felt the weight of loneliness pressing on him, but he also felt a sense of pride in what he had built for himself on this land. The small town a few miles away was the only place he would see other people, and even then it was brief and mostly business. He went to the general store once a week to pick up supplies and sometimes exchanged a few words with the townsfolk. But no real companionship came from those visits. At night he would sit on the porch, looking out over the fields, listening to the distant calls of coyotes and the soft rustling of the grass in the wind. The silence often made him think about the life he had chosen and the emptiness that came with it. He sometimes imagined having someone to share the chores with, someone who could sit beside him in the evenings and talk or laugh, or simply exist alongside him. That thought had lingered in his mind for a long time, and finally he decided it was time to try something different, something that might bring change to his quiet life. He had heard of mail-order brides through a letter from a friend who had done the same years ago and had found happiness. The idea was foreign and a little unsettling at first, but the possibility of companionship in someone to share his life with was tempting. He began to write letters describing himself, his work, and his simple life on the ranch, hoping to find someone who would understand and appreciate it. Days turned into weeks as he sent letters back and forth, waiting for a reply that could bring a change to his life. Each letter was a chance to imagine a future that might not be so lonely, a life that included shared meals, shared stories, and shared moments of quiet peace. The rancher knew that the path he was taking was not common and might be met with doubt or even ridicule by those around him. But he had decided that he could not continue in isolation without trying to reach out. He made sure the cabin was in order, cleaning every corner and fixing anything that had fallen into disrepair. He checked the barn and the fences twice as carefully as usual, making sure everything looked welcoming. There was a nervous excitement in him as he imagined the arrival of a bride, someone who would bring color and warmth into the simplicity of his life. He wondered what she would be like. Would she be shy or bold? Would she know how to work the land? Or would she need to learn? Would she laugh easily or be quiet and thoughtful? He thought about how they might talk about the world beyond the plains, about the small town, the travelers, and the stories that reached even his remote ranch. Sometimes he felt a flicker of fear, imagining the unknown person coming into his life and changing everything he had grown used to. But that fear was balanced by hope, the hope of sharing the beauty of the mornings, the satisfaction of a hard day's work, and the quiet peace of the evenings. The days passed slowly as he continued his chores, trying to keep busy while waiting for news. He mended fences and painted doors and fixed the roof of the barn. He rode out to the fields, checking on the cattle, making sure none had wandered off. He moved from task to task with a purpose that kept his mind occupied, but always returning to the thought of her arrival. He imagined her walking up the path to the cabin, carrying a small bag, perhaps with a few treasured belongings. A look of curiosity on her face as she took in the vastness of the land. The thought made him smile, even as he felt a twinge of nervousness. He prepared meals with care, thinking about what she might like to eat, and set small corner of the cabin with fresh linens and blankets. Each night he lay awake thinking about the letters, wondering if they had captured the true essence of his life, if they had conveyed his honesty and his desire for a genuine companion. The wind whispered through the trees and across the fields as he drifted into sleep, sometimes dreaming of a soft voice and a warm smile. Breaking the long stretch of solitude, there was a growing sense of anticipation as the day he expected a reply from the bride drew near. Each sound at the gate or on the path made his heart beat faster, hoping it was news at last. The cabin felt alive with the preparation, each corner reflecting care and thought. He thought of the stories he would share of his life, of the land of the cattle, and the quiet town nearby. He imagined learning about her life, her dreams, and her journey from afar to this isolated place. It was a mix of hope and apprehension that filled the rancher as he went about his routine, feeding the animals, checking the fences, and preparing the cabin. The days were long, but they now carried a sense of purpose beyond the usual work. He counted down the moments until the arrival of a letter that would confirm she was coming. And when at last a small envelope arrived, carried by the mail rider, he held it with hands that trembled slightly. He read the words carefully, savoring each line that told him she had accepted and would journey to meet him. A wave of emotions washed over him, excitement, nervousness, and relief blending together. He folded the letter and held it close, thinking of the journey she would take, the sights and challenges she would encounter to reach this remote ranch. The rancher spent the next few days preparing even more, meticulously checking every detail of the cabin and the barn, making sure everything was ready. He rode across the fields, imagining the day she would arrive, imagining how she would take in the vast sky and endless land. Each evening he sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, thinking of the life that was about to change, thinking of the companionship and shared moments that might come. The anticipation grew with each passing hour, and the rancher felt a mixture of fear and excitement for the unknown journey ahead. The land that had once seemed lonely now held the promise of new beginnings, of laughter and shared work and quiet talks under the stars. And as the first light of dawn broke across the plains, the rancher stood at the edge of his porch, looking toward the distant trail, imagining a figure appearing on the horizon, a life that might soon be shared, a heart that might finally be close to another, a change that would bring both challenges and joy to the wide open plains. The days passed slowly as the rancher waited for the arrival of the mail-order bride. Each morning he rose early, fed the cattle, and checked the fences with a quiet hope in his heart, as today might be the day he would see her for the first time. The town was quiet as usual, and the wind carried the distant sound of a wagon rolling over the dusty trail. He prepared the cabin with care, making sure everything looked neat and welcoming. Fresh linens were laid on the bed, and the table was set simply with dishes and a few small touches of warmth. He imagined her stepping inside and seeing the effort he had put into making her arrival comfortable. The thought of someone new brought a strange mix of excitement and nervousness to his chest. He walked around the property, inspecting the barn and the corral, making sure everything was in order. The cattle moved lazily under the morning sun, and the smell of hay and earth filled the air. He paused occasionally to glance down the trail, hoping to catch sight of a figure approaching. Each sound made him tense in anticipation: the creak of a wagon, the clip of horses' hooves, and even the soft whistle of the wind seemed like signs that the day had come. The townsfolk had begun to gossip about the mail-order bride, discussing who she might be and what she might look like. Some were skeptical, others were curious, but all spoke with the fascination of those who lived in small towns and whose lives were often touched by new arrivals. He rode into town to pick up supplies and felt the eyes of the townsfolk on him, but he kept his head down and focused on his purpose. He bought fresh flour, sugar, and a few small items that he thought might be useful for her journey. On the way back, he imagined how she would react to the simplicity of the cabin, the wide-open plains, and the work that awaited her. He felt a twinge of anxiety, wondering if she would be strong enough to handle the life of the ranch, if she would find comfort in the quiet nights and hard work of the days. When he returned, he found a small note waiting at the gate from the mail rider. His hands trembled as he opened it and read the words that said she had left the town where she had been waiting and was on her way to the ranch. A mixture of relief, excitement, and nervousness washed over him. He folded the note and held it close, imagining the journey she was taking, imagining the dust, the sun, and the long hours on the wagon. He thought about how she might be feeling the loneliness of travel and the hope of a new life ahead. He checked the cabin again, making sure the firewood was stacked neatly and the kitchen was clean. He arranged a few small flowers on the table, imagining her smile if she noticed them. As the day turned into afternoon, he rode along the trail to see if he could catch a glimpse of her approaching. The wind blew across the plains, and the grass swayed gently under the sun. He squinted into the distance, trying to see beyond the heat shimmer of the horizon. Hours passed slowly, and he returned to the cabin, setting a simple meal on the table ready for her arrival. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, he felt a strange mix of anticipation and fear, imagining how she would react to the vastness of the land and the solitude of the ranch. Night fell, and he sat on the porch under the stars, listening to the sounds of the plains. Each rustle of the grass and distant call of an animal made him tense with hope that tomorrow would bring her arrival. He lay awake thinking of the letters they had exchanged, imagining the first words they would speak, the first smiles they would share. He wondered if her eyes would be bright with curiosity, or if she would be tired from her journey. The following morning brought with it the sound of hooves on the trail and the distant creak of a wagon. He rushed to the gate and saw a figure approaching, carrying a small bundle of belongings. She looked tired, but there was a spark in her eyes, a boldness that he had not expected. His heart beat faster as he stepped forward to greet her, unsure of what words to use or how to react. She smiled softly, a hint of curiosity and determination in her gaze. He offered a hand to help her down from the wagon, and she accepted with a graceful strength that surprised him. They exchanged greetings and introductions. In simple words, trying to measure each other, the rancher, noticing her independence, encouraged the bride, seeing the care and effort he had put into preparing for her arrival. The walk to the cabin was filled with quiet conversation and glances at the wide open land around them. She asked questions about the cattle, the fences, and the town, and he answered patiently, showing her the rhythms of ranch life. At the cabin, she looked around with interest, noting the neatness of the rooms and the thoughtful touches he had added. They shared a meal together, sitting across from each other at the small table, talking in simple words about the journey and the work that awaited. There were moments of silence, comfortable pauses where each absorbed the presence of the other and the weight of the moment. The rancher felt a strange sense of relief, seeing that she was not overwhelmed or frightened, but curious and strong. She seemed ready to face the challenges of the life ahead, and that gave him hope that perhaps they could build something together. As the sun set, they stepped outside to watch the sky turn gold and pink over the plains. The wind blew softly across the land, carrying the scent of earth and grass. They stood together quietly, sharing the moment without the need for many words. The rancher felt a spark of connection, the first real sense of companionship he had known in years. The bride looked out at the endless fields and the distant hills, her eyes reflecting both the journey she had taken and the possibilities that lay ahead. That night, they prepared for the first night in the cabin together, the rancher feeling the weight of responsibility and hope, the bride feeling the anticipation of a new life. They shared stories of the journey and the life they had known before, each learning from the other about the world they were about to face together. The long night was filled with quiet conversation and soft laughter as they discovered similarities and differences and imagined the days to come. By morning, they had begun to understand the rhythm of each other, the ways of speaking, and the ways of listening. The rancher felt a sense of relief seeing that she was strong and adaptable, and she felt a sense of comfort knowing that he was patient and kind. The beginning of a new chapter had started, full of hope, uncertainty, and the strange excitement of two lives intersecting in the wide open west. As the sun rose over the plains once more, they set out together to tend the cattle, checking fences and preparing for the work ahead, learning slowly that partnership was not just about sharing tasks, but about sharing moments of quiet connection, moments that would grow into trust and eventually something deeper. Each day brought small challenges and discoveries. The rancher was learning more about her resilience and determination, and she learning more about his patience and steady nature. The trail to the town, the cabin, the fields, and the barn became shared spaces where laughter and quiet understanding began to take root. They faced small surprises together, adjusting and adapting, learning to anticipate and rely on one another in ways that brought both comfort and excitement. And through each shared sunrise and sunset, the bond between them grew, planting the seeds of a story that was just beginning, unfolding across the wide open plains of the West. The first days after her arrival were filled with both excitement and tension. The rancher and the bride were learning to live together in a rhythm that was completely new to both of them. Each morning began with the sun rising over the plains, feeding the cattle, checking fences, and ensuring the barn was in order. She asked questions and observed closely, wanting to learn the ways of the land and the work it demanded. The rancher watched her carefully, noting her determination and the way she approached each task with curiosity and care. At times there were small disagreements about how to do a job or the best way to manage the cattle. But these moments were always met with patience. They learned to compromise and find a middle ground between the ways. He had done things for years, and the fresh ideas she brought. Life on the ranch was demanding, and the days were long, but each evening they found moments to rest together. Sharing simple meals and talking about the past and their hopes for the future, sometimes their conversations would fall into silence, and they would simply sit together, listening to the sounds of the plains the wind threw, the grass, the distant calls of animals, and the soft creaking of the cabin. She discovered that he was not only strong and capable, but also thoughtful and patient. He discovered that she was not only curious and independent, but also resourceful and brave. They began to appreciate the ways their differences complemented each other, making the work lighter and the days more enjoyable. One afternoon, a sudden storm approached, dark clouds rolling across the sky, and strong winds whipping the grass into waves. The cattle became restless, and some tried to break free from the corral. They worked together quickly, moving to secure the animals and protect the barn and the cabin. She took directions calmly and helped guide the cattle with steady hands. He realized in that moment how capable she was, how much he could rely on her in times of challenge. After the storm passed and the animals were safe, they both collapsed in exhaustion, sitting on the porch drenched and tired, but laughing softly at the intensity of the experience. That night, as they sat by the fire warming themselves, he found himself speaking more openly about his past life, about the years he had spent alone, and about the moments of doubt he had faced. She listened attentively, offering understanding and encouragement without judgment. She spoke of her journey to reach the ranch, of the challenges she faced, and the hope she carried with her. They discovered common desires for stability, companionship, and a life shared with someone who could understand and respect them. As the days turned into weeks, the rancher and the bride began to develop routines that included small gestures of care and understanding. She learned to prepare meals that he enjoyed, and he learned to notice the small things that made her feel appreciated. They laughed at mistakes and supported each other through moments of frustration and fatigue. The town began to take notice of their growing partnership, watching how she handled the work and how he treated her with respect. Rumors and gossip slowly gave way to admiration as neighbors and townsfolk saw the bond taking shape. The rancher felt a sense of pride not only in his land but in the way they were growing together, learning from each other and forming a connection that was more than simple companionship. They began to share simple joys, such as riding the horses across the open fields together, watching sunsets and noticing the beauty in the small details of the land. These shared experiences brought a sense of closeness that neither had anticipated. There were moments of tension and frustration when things did not go smoothly, when cattle wandered off or fences broke down or supplies ran low, but each challenge was met together with a sense of teamwork and problem-solving. The bride discovered her own strength in facing these challenges, and the rancher discovered the joy of having someone who understood and supported him. They shared stories of the past and imagined the future, weaving dreams of a life built together, filled with both work and laughter. The nights were filled with quiet reflection, sitting by the fire or on the porch under the stars, talking softly and learning the rhythms of each other's thoughts and feelings. The days were filled with hard work and shared responsibilities, with moments of tenderness and connection scattered throughout. They began to anticipate each other's needs, noticing when one was tired or needed help or encouragement. They celebrated small successes, the completion of a fence, the safe return of the cattle, the repair of a roof, and the simple pleasure of a well-prepared meal. Through these experiences, their respect and admiration for each other grew. The rancher appreciating her courage and skill, and the bride appreciating his patience and consistency. They began to imagine a life that was not simply about survival, but about thriving together, finding joy in shared effort and shared understanding. There were small moments of laughter when mistakes were made, when plans went awry, or when they discovered unexpected challenges in the work. These moments helped to build a bond that was strong and resilient, capable of withstanding the pressures of the hard life on the plains. They began to speak more openly of hopes and fears, acknowledging that trust and honesty were as important as physical strength in building a life together. She expressed curiosity about the town, the neighbors, and the possibility of friendships, social connections beyond the ranch. He listened and shared his own experiences, offering guidance and encouragement. While respecting her perspective and independence, the rhythm of life on the ranch became their shared rhythm each day, bringing new opportunities for learning, connection, and mutual support. They found pleasure in the simple routines, the rising sun, the work in the fields, the feeding of the animals, and the quiet evenings together. Their partnership began to take on a deeper meaning, one that included emotional support, trust, and the beginnings of love. They learned that differences could be strengths that, combined with patience, understanding, and care, could create a strong foundation for a life shared. They celebrated small victories and faced challenges together, learning that cooperation and communication were essential for both work and companionship. Slowly, the fear and uncertainty of the beginning gave way to confidence and comfort in each other's presence. The rancher and the bride discovered that life could be both challenging and joyful, that shared effort could lead to deeper connection, and that love could grow quietly in the midst of everyday life. Each day they learned more about each other, about themselves, and about the possibilities that life on the plains could hold. Through storms and sunshine, through work and rest, their bond strengthened, and a story of connection, courage, and unexpected companionship began to unfold across the wide-open west. The days continued to pass, with the rhythm of work and quiet moments together growing more natural and comfortable. The rancher and the bride had begun to anticipate each other's actions, noticing when the other needed help or encouragement. They found a steady pace in their routines, feeding the cattle, mending fences, tending to the garden, and maintaining the cabin. Each task became a shared experience and an opportunity to deepen their connection. The town remained a distant curiosity, the people often observing their growing partnership with quiet interest. Sometimes they would ride into town together, purchasing supplies and exchanging greetings with neighbors. The townsfolk began to notice not only her strength and capability, but also the way he treated her with respect and care. The bond between them was becoming visible even to outsiders, a gentle but strong connection built on trust and shared effort. One afternoon, a sudden challenge arose. A wagon carrying supplies had broken down several miles away, and they needed to travel to assist. They worked together to guide the wagon and help secure the load, carefully coordinating their actions. The bride displayed ingenuity and courage, taking initiative to steady the animals and help lift the heavier items. The rancher admired her resilience and was grateful for her presence in the difficult moment. They returned home exhausted, but satisfied with their teamwork, reflecting on how their skills and personalities complemented each other. That evening they shared a simple meal and spoke softly of the events of the day, laughing at small mistakes and celebrating the accomplishments. The quiet of the evening allowed them to reflect on how far they had come in a short time, from strangers to companions who could rely on each other. The nights were filled with conversations about hopes, dreams, and memories from the past, learning to weave their histories into shared stories. They discovered common ground in their values and perspectives, appreciating honesty, kindness, and resilience in one another. The bond between them deepened with each shared experience, the physical work of the ranch combined with emotional support, creating a sense of partnership that went beyond simple companionship. There were moments of doubt and uncertainty when tasks became difficult, or when differences in opinion arose, but these were met with patience and a willingness to listen and understand. Each challenge was an opportunity to learn more about each other, to discover how they could work together and support one another. They began to find joy in the small things, a smile shared over a task completed together, the comfort of sitting quietly side by side, the feeling of trust in knowing the other had their back. The rhythm of life on the ranch became a rhythm of connection and cooperation, teaching them that partnership was more than shared work. It was shared attention, thoughtfulness, and care. The bride began to take initiative in planning small improvements around the ranch, organizing supplies, and suggesting new ways to manage certain tasks. The rancher appreciated her ideas and found satisfaction in seeing her confidence grow. They celebrated these moments of innovation and learning together, acknowledging each other's contributions and feeling pride in what they accomplished. The wind across the plains seemed to carry a quiet approval as They moved through their days riding the horses, feeding the animals, and maintaining the property. Each sunrise brought new opportunities to face challenges and discover strengths in themselves and in each other. They explored the land together, walking along the ridges and through the meadows, discussing the seasons, the animals, and the beauty of the open skies. These moments of shared observation brought laughter, curiosity, and a sense of peace. The evenings were often spent on the porch watching the sun dip below, the horizon sharing stories and thoughts in a gentle rhythm that required no pressure, just presence and understanding. They learned to read each other's moods and needs, noticing a quiet sigh or a thoughtful gaze and responding with care. Trust grew naturally as they discovered reliability, patience, and kindness in each other. The rancher found himself admiring not only her skill and determination, but also her perspective and humor, the way she approached life with a balance of curiosity and caution. She found herself respecting not only his strength and experience, but also his gentleness and attention, to detail the way he treated her with dignity and care. Together they began to imagine a future not defined by isolation or fear, but by shared experience and mutual support. They considered improvements to the ranch's new ventures and ways to make life richer, not only in work, but in connection and enjoyment. The shared challenges of the ranch became metaphors for life together, teaching them compromise, communication, and reliance on one another. They recognized that the unexpected arrival that had sparked this journey was the beginning of a partnership that required attention, effort, and understanding. As the days and weeks passed, they discovered joy in routine and excitement in shared discoveries, learning more about themselves and each other with every passing day. They laughed at mistakes learned from them and celebrated accomplishments together, creating a sense of shared purpose and satisfaction. Small acts of kindness, gestures of thoughtfulness, and support became integral parts of their daily life, reinforcing the growing bond between them. Each sunrise and sunset became a marker of progress in both the work on the ranch and in the development of their relationship. They found comfort in silence together, conversation together, shared work, and shared reflection. These experiences slowly built a foundation for a deeper connection, a relationship grounded in respect, trust, and admiration. The rancher and the bride had begun to transform the initial curiosity and nervousness of their first days into a comfortable and supportive partnership filled with both challenge and joy. They discovered that life together on the plains required effort, cooperation, and patience, but also provided opportunities for growth, love, and understanding. The bond they were building was not rushed or forced. It was carefully cultivated through everyday experiences, shared work, and thoughtful attention to each other's needs and feelings. Through each passing day, their connection strengthened, teaching them that love and companionship could grow naturally in the midst of hard work and simple living. They discovered that strength could be found in vulnerability, that courage could be found in cooperation, and that happiness could be found in the quiet moments of shared experience. Each challenge faced together, each small victory celebrated, and each moment of understanding and patience brought them closer, forming the beginnings of a story that would continue to unfold across the wide-open plains of the West. Life on the ranch had settled into a steady rhythm, but with it came new challenges and unexpected moments that tested both the rancher and the bride. Their partnership had grown stronger over the weeks. The shared work, the quiet conversations, and the moments of laughter had built a foundation of trust and understanding. One morning, the rancher noticed signs that a herd of cattle had wandered further than usual into the hills. They needed to act quickly to prevent them from scattering too far and getting lost. Together, they saddled the horses and rode out across the plains, their movements coordinated almost instinctively after months of shared work and growing understanding. The bride guided the animals with confidence, her voice calm and clear, and her hands steady on the reins. The rancher followed closely, observing her skill and the way she handled the cattle with knowledge and care. By the time the sun rose high, they had managed to bring the herd back safely to the corral, their faces flushed from exertion and sweat. They laughed together at the exhaustion the physical effort had brought, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction in overcoming a challenge as a team. That evening they sat on the porch, the sky painted in soft shades of orange and pink reflecting on the day. They spoke of past struggles and victories, sharing stories that revealed more about who they were and the experiences that had shaped them. Their connection deepened as they found common ground in their values, hopes, and dreams. The rancher realized he had never felt such trust in another person never felt. The security of knowing someone truly understood and cared. The bride discovered a sense of belonging and comfort in a place that had once felt vast and lonely, now filled with shared memories and understanding. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, each day bringing its own challenges, joys, and discoveries. The seasons changed slowly on the plains, and with them came new responsibilities and new opportunities for connection. They worked together, preparing for winter storing supplies, tending to the garden, and ensuring the barn was secure. They faced storms, harsh winds, and the unexpected illness of a cow or two, but faced everything with patience and cooperation, learning more about each other and themselves along the way. Small gestures of care and thoughtfulness became a part of daily life, bringing warmth to the long hours of labor. A simple meal prepared with attention, a blanket laid out for warmth, a gentle word of encouragement, all built into a tapestry of shared life. One day they rode into town to purchase supplies and were met with curious looks from townsfolk who had watched their partnership grow. People commented on her strength and independence and on his kindness and patience. There was respect in the glances and words that reflected the bond they had built, the journey they had taken to reach this point. They returned to the ranch with provisions and stories of the town, sharing laughter and conversation that reflected a growing comfort and companionship. As winter approached, they found themselves enjoying the quiet moments inside the cabin, the crackle of the fire, the warmth of shared space, and the sense of togetherness. They spoke of hopes for the coming months, dreams of improvements on the ranch, and the possibility of building a life that was not only about survival, but about growth and joy. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, the unspoken understanding of when one was tired or needed help or encouragement. The rhythm of life had become a rhythm of connection, of shared experiences, and of trust that had been built slowly over time. In the cold months, they spent long hours in the cabin telling stories, reading from worn books, sharing memories of places they had seen, and imagining adventures they might have together. Their bonds strengthened not only through work, but through the quiet moments of reflection and shared understanding. The seasons eventually shifted, and spring brought new life to the ranch calves born to the herd. Flowers blooming in the garden, and longer days filled with light and warmth. They welcomed the change together, working in the fields, planting new crops, repairing fences, and preparing for the challenges ahead. Each success was celebrated together, small victories of life on the plains strengthened their connection and deepened the respect and admiration they felt for each other. Over time, they began to speak more openly about the future, about plans for the ranch, the possibility of more companions, and the continuation of a life built together. Their conversations were thoughtful, patient, and filled with care, each word measured and considered, but full of hope. They discovered that the unexpected arrival that had sparked this story had become a life of partnership, love, and shared purpose. The rancher found joy in her independence and courage. The bride found comfort in his patience and strength. They laughed together, they worked together, and they faced challenges together, learning that the essence of companionship was not in grand gestures, but in the everyday acts of care and support. Their love had grown slowly, quietly resilient and strong, capable of withstanding the hardships of life on the plains and embracing the simple pleasures of shared existence. As the sun set on the wide-open west, they stood together on the porch, watching the light fade across the fields. The cattle moving slowly in the distance, and the wind carrying the scent of earth and grass. They were no longer two strangers brought together by letters and hope. They were partners, companions, and companions, whose bond had been forged through shared effort and shared life. Their story was one of courage, patience, and understanding of how unexpected beginnings could lead to deep connection and enduring love. The rancher and the bride had built a life together, a life filled with work, laughter, learning, and trust, a life that reflected the beauty of companionship and the possibility of love, born in the most unexpected of ways. The plains stretched endlessly before them, a reminder of the challenges and the opportunities that lay ahead, but also a symbol of the partnership and love that had grown strong enough to face whatever came next. And as night fell, they sat quietly side by side, the vast sky above. Then the familiar sounds of the ranch around them, the warmth of shared presence, comforting and reassuring. They knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, their hearts and lives, intertwined by the experiences and the journey that had begun with a simple letter and the courage to welcome the unknown into their lives. The rancher and the bride had grown accustomed to life on the plains, and yet each day brought new experiences and moments that deepened their bond. They had learned the rhythms of the land and of each other, the unspoken cues and quiet gestures that made their partnership smooth and steady. One morning they noticed that the cattle had begun to graze in areas farther from the usual pastures, and they needed to guide them back carefully to avoid loss. Together they saddled their horses and rode across the fields, moving with quiet coordination. She guided the herd with confidence, her hands steady and her voice calm. He followed closely, observing her skill and patience, realizing how much she had grown in understanding the work and the land. When they returned the herd to safety, they shared a quiet moment on the porch, watching the sun climb over the horizon. They spoke softly about the day, the land, the cattle, and the life they had built together. There was a sense of comfort in their shared understanding, the knowledge that each could rely on the other in any circumstance. As the days passed, they faced small challenges, storms that blew through the plains, unexpected illness among the animals, and the ever-present work of maintaining the ranch. Each challenge was met with cooperation and patience, learning to listen to each other's ideas and perspectives and finding solutions together. They discovered that the act of working together not only strengthened their bond, but also taught them about compromise, trust, and understanding. Simple moments like preparing meals together, fixing fences, and tending the garden became times of quiet connection filled with laughter, shared stories, and small gestures of care. They began to notice subtle changes in each other, the slight weariness in the mornings, the small victories that brought pride and joy, and the shared delight in accomplishing tasks as a team. The town remained a distant presence, a place they visited occasionally for supplies and communication with neighbors, but their focus was on the life they were creating together on the ranch. Each visit to town reminded them of the outside world, but also reinforced the uniqueness of their bond and the self-sufficiency they had developed. One afternoon, they discovered a small wild horse that had wandered near the ranch. They worked together to approach it gently and help it find its way back to the nearby herd. The experience brought laughter and satisfaction, showing how well they had learned to understand the movements and behavior of the animals as a team. Even small moments became lessons in cooperation and observation, deepening their appreciation for each other's insight and patience. As the seasons changed, they adapted to the new work that each brought, planting and harvesting crops, tending to young animals, and preparing for weather changes. They found joy in the cycle of life on the plains, appreciating both the challenges and the rewards that came with careful attention and teamwork. Their conversations grew more intimate as they shared memories from their separate pasts, hopes for the future, and reflections on the journey that had brought them together. There was a quiet understanding in their exchanges, of respect for each other's thoughts and feelings that created a strong foundation for trust and companionship. Even in the face of difficult days, they found comfort in small gestures, a word of encouragement, a shared meal, or simply sitting together, watching the sun set over the fields. These moments built a deeper understanding of each other as partners and companions capable of facing hardships together. One winter evening, as snow began to fall, they sat together by the fire, reflecting on the months that had passed. They spoke of the changes they had seen in themselves, the growth in skill and patience, and the quiet strength that came from relying on one another. They discussed dreams for the future, the potential of expanding the ranch, improving the land, and continuing to build a life that was both challenging and rewarding. The cold weather brought long hours indoors, but they found ways to maintain connection through conversation, reading, and planning together. The quiet of the cabin became a space of shared reflection and support, a time to rest and to renew their energy for the work that lay ahead. Spring brought with it the renewal of the land calves born into the herd. Flowers blooming in the garden and longer days filled with light. The couple took to their tasks with renewed energy, enjoying the simple pleasure of tending to life and land together. They celebrated small successes, the safe birth of animals, the first shoots in the garden, and the smooth operation of daily chores. Their joy was not in grand gestures, but in the quiet achievements that came from working together and supporting one another. As they rode across the plains together, they spoke of the vastness of the land, the beauty of the sky, and the endless possibilities for growth and improvement on the ranch. They noticed the small details together, the patterns of the grass, the sounds of the animals, and the shifts in the weather. These observations strengthened their connection, allowing them to understand both the land and each other more fully. Over time, they began to plan for long-term improvements on the ranch. New fences, better shelters for the animals, and enhancements to the cabin. Each plan was discussed and executed together, carefully considering each step and ensuring that both contributed to the decisions being made. Their partnership became more than shared work. It became a shared vision, a life built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. Even in the quiet moments when they simply watched the sunset or listened to the wind across the plains, they found contentment in the presence of one another. Their bond had deepened to the point where words were not always necessary. The comfort and support in shared silence spoke volumes about their connection. As the year continued, they faced challenges both expected and unexpected. Whether sickness among animals and occasional mechanical failures, all tested their patience and cooperation. They met each challenge together, learning more about each other and discovering new ways to solve problems as a team. Each success strengthened their bond, and each difficulty reminded them of the importance of trust and understanding in their partnership. Nights were filled with quiet reflection by the fire, planning for the days ahead, and enjoying the simple pleasure of companionship. They learned that the life they were building was not about perfection, but about shared effort, respect, and the quiet joys that came from working and living together. Through these experiences, they grew in appreciation for each other's strengths and patience, discovering that love and partnership were found in the small, consistent actions of care and attention. The rancher admired the bride's strength, courage, and quick thinking, while she respected his patience, skill, and quiet determination. Together, they celebrated the victories, learned from the setbacks, and found comfort in their shared presence. Each sunrise and sunset brought new opportunities for connection, new experiences, and deeper understanding. They learned that companionship was not just about sharing work, but about supporting one another, noticing needs, and creating joy in the everyday moments. The plains stretched endlessly before them, a constant reminder of the vast world they navigated together, each challenge and triumph reinforcing their bond. The journey that had begun with a simple letter had transformed into a rich life of shared effort, laughter, and quiet understanding. They were no longer two individuals seeking comfort, but partners, companions, and co-creators of a life that was resilient, full, and deeply connected. Each day continued to strengthen their partnership, shared experiences weaving a story of trust, respect, and enduring love that would carry them through all the seasons and challenges of the wide-open West.